You want to make sure that you talk to the accountant, the lawyer about, okay, which one works best for me? Because should something happen, you don't want your personal assets to be attacked. You don't want any of that to come into play. So you got to think about incorporation. That's the INC that you see. You have to think about LLC, which is limited liability corporation. So those are the things that you discuss with those trusted professionals that you've established a relationship with.
That's right. Welcome back to Married People's Business Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Tolbert. I'm here with my beautiful co-host and partner in life,
Shalise Tolbert.
And every day, people come to us because we're lawyers by trade. We own a law firm, and we've been in business for 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And people want to know, how do you build a successful business with the person that you love? And that is a question that stumps a lot of people. There are a lot of misconceptions out there that people don't think that you can be in love and be in a partnership with somebody romantically and own a business. But we're here to dispel that, and we're here on this platform to give you information on how to do that. So today's topic of this podcast is what?
Build together, win together. How to build $1 million business with your mate.
$1 million business. I know that got some of your attention. So
Look,
what we're going to do is give you a couple of steps and tips because, we started a business over 10 years ago, and there are a lot of tricks to the trade to it. There are a lot of steps and things that we did over the last 10 years that we want to share with you. And hopefully some of these tips and steps will help you on your journey to a $1 million business.
So starting with the basics, identify a service or need that's going to be your business. I mean, that's the basic thing. Most people start out with something that's their passion, but if your passion doesn't match the need or the service that's needed or the good that's needed, then you're not going to make any money off of it. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think the first step that we did when we started our law firm, Tolbert and Tolbert, that's located in the beautiful downtown business district of Gary, Indiana, is first and foremost, what we did was we saw and analyzed whether or not a law firm would be sustainable in the market area that we were opening. So there are a host of things that you can do when you're trying to decide whether or not there's a need. You can do surveys, and there's a lot of technology out there, Survey Monkeys. There are business groups like the Chamber of Commerce and probably in your respective area where you could talk to other business people in the area and find out whether what your business idea that you have, whether or not it's something that people need, because you might want to do something. I've seen a million times where people have wanted to open up businesses or wanted to prepare a good or deliver a good to somebody, but it wasn't necessarily what the market wanted. So that's the first step that we did. We looked in Gary. We saw that there was a lack of law firms in the city of Gary, and that's our hometown, which is another area we'll get to in this podcast. And we decided to fill the need, which is lack of law firms, lack of legal advice that people were given in our city, and we decided to fill that need.
And I just want to, insert a really important detail I think that makes a difference. It wasn't just a lack of a law firm. We do civil work, civil litigation. So we looked specifically for the areas of law that we wanted to identify were needed in the city of Gary and surrounding areas. So it's not just about a law firm. It's being very specific about the need in that area.
Or not just about a business, is more about what do people want and what do people need, right?
Right. All right. So moving on to the next one.
Yeah. So the next thing that you do, the old saying is there's the importance of anything that you create is in the name. So you want to be very intentional about the name that you give your product, your service, or your good. For us, it was fairly easy. Our last names are Tolbert, so Tolbert and Tolbert bears the name of our law firm. But if you're serving pies, you might want to have a catchy phrase for your pies, or if you're selling a widget or whatever it is, you want to have something that's going to be distinct for the market and that is going to catch people's eyes. So you want to have a good name for your business, because once you put that name on your business, it's just like anything else, just like your real name, you're going to have to live with it. So, you know, if people start calling you PP Johnson, you know, you know, you're going to have to live with the name PP Johnson. So you don't want that name, a negative name or negative connotation, to be attached to your business. So choose the business name wisely.
And the other thing with searching, selecting a business name is doing a name search to make sure there isn't another business out there in your state that's registered with the Secretary of State in that name. You know, you'd be surprised that a lot of names have been reserved. So when you do that search, you can search on the Secretary of State's website. And I think for a small fee, it allows you to reserve the name for a certain amount of time until you're ready to register it with the Secretary of State.
That's a really good point. And what that does too is that keeps you out of litigation, because if you use somebody else's business name that's already been registered as a trade name, you can get sued for copyright infringement, or I'm sorry, trademark infringement. And you don't want that. So the cheap way to do it is just to go on Google and type in the name that you want to use. Google is a very helpful function to tell you what is out there and kind of in the stratosphere of names. You can also go to the trademark website. You can go to your respective states. As Shalise talked about, the Secretary of State for your respective state, and run a domain search or a name search. And if the name is being used, most likely it will come up. So that's what we did. No one had Tolbert and Tolbert, thank goodness.
Not here.
Not here. Actually, there was a Tolbert and Tolbert in Virginia.
Right.
But different service, different name in terms of where it's located. So we were good.
And one last thing on the name search. Once we get to another tip or thing to do, it's going to make a difference when you're using entity letters after it, LLC, Inc., stuff like that. So we'll talk about that in the next couple of tips.
All right. So the next thing we did when we were starting our business, our $1 million business, is we established relationships with very trusted professionals.
Yes.
So one of the things you might ask yourself is, what trusted professionals do you think you would need to develop a relationship with? So we're lawyers by trade. So we were able to check that box. We didn't need to establish a connection with the lawyer per se, but you definitely need to establish a relationship with the lawyer if you're not one. And even if you are one, you might want to have a lawyer that talk you through ethics issues and that sort of thing. But have a relationship with the lawyer. And also you want a relationship with a sound accountant, because
absolutely,
once you get your business off the ground, there are going to be tax complications and tax things that you would have to navigate. And you want to make sure that your business is up and running correctly, and that you don't suffer from adverse tax consequences.
Right. So I think that having a trusted accountant from the very beginning is having someone with you along for the growth of your $1 million business.
Yeah, that was the first thing one of the first things we did was we made an established relationship with an accountant, and that accountant was able to give us some very valuable information in terms of how we set up, which is going to bring us to another part of the podcast where we talk about entity formation and that sort of thing. But establish a relationship with a trusted professional, accountant and a lawyer, and that is the good foundation that you would lay for starting your $1 million business.
So next, you want to do a business plan and literally sit down, map out the plan of how your business will run, including in that business plan, your market studies, your research, your things like that, your financials, planned financials, future things like that. Put it all down in that plan.
Right. I believe that, it's not real until you put it down in writing. So it's very important that if you're going to build any sort of a successful business, and, particularly $1 million business or one that is highly successful, then you have to have thought about every facet of that business from beginning to end, from what is the old saying, from from nuts to bolts. So you have to know if you need a stove, if you're a restaurant, how many stoves you need, what type of stove you need. If you're a service-based business, do you need support staff? Do you need tables? Do you need chairs? And the business plan will mark out all of the nitty-gritty things that oftentimes are not really accounted for if you don't write it down. So the business plan will also go through funding mechanisms that you might need. It will talk about where you're going to locate your business. And there's just a host of things, too many of which we would not want to get through in this podcast because we would never get through it. So what we've done for you, lucky you, is we dropped in a link to the comments of this podcast. We did a podcast on how to create a business plan that if you're interested in more of the intricate details on a business plan, I would encourage you to look at that podcast, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. You'll find it helpful.
Also, there are various resources online to find a template for a business plan. So
no doubt,
use your resources to do that.
All right. So the next most important part of starting your $1 million business, the next step you need to do is you need to decide what sort of entity your business is going to be. So, most places and most businesses are structured in various entities. So you could be a sole proprietor, where you're running your business in your own name or some sort of assumed business name. So, for example, if I own a pie business, it would be Michael's
You
Pie.
like pies?
I do love pies, as you can tell. I love pies. So you can, it would be Michael's Pies. There would not be an LLC to that, and we'll talk about that real quickly in terms of what that means. It won't be a corporation. It'll just be Michael's Pies, assumed business names.
So let me jump in right here.
Yeah, sure.
So this is important when you've established that relationship with an accountant or a lawyer to determine which entity will work best for you, because that then affects the tax implications that you have. So as a sole proprietor, everything is going to be attached to your personal assets. So without me, getting into the details of that, you want to make sure that you talk to the accountant, the lawyer about, okay, which one works best for me? Because should something happen, you don't want your personal assets to be attacked. You don't want any of that to come into play. So you got to think about incorporation. That's the INC that you see. You have to think about LLC, which is limited liability corporation. So those are the things that you discuss with those trusted professionals that you've established a relationship with.
That's right. So it's very important. This is probably one of the most important parts of your foundation of starting that $1 million business is what is your entity going to be? For two reasons, which I'll go over really quickly, that Shalise touched on a little bit, is one, for liability purposes, for protecting your personal assets. Because if you are just Michael Pies, assumed business name, if something happens and you're sued in that name, then all of your personal assets, your car, your home, all of those things are up for grabs in a lawsuit because they're suing you as Michael's Pies. When you create a limited liability company or a corporation or a LLP, limited liability partnership, and some of these other entities, then those entities are the ones that would be sued if there is a lawsuit arising out of your business operations. The other really cool benefit of having different entities and finding the right entity when you talk to your accountant is because of the tax consequences of those entities. So for corporations, typically corporations are double taxed because you have a tax that goes, and I want to make a qualifier. I'm not giving tax advice because I'm not an accountant, but there's a certain level of taxation that corporations go through. When you have an LLC, there's flow through taxes. When you have S corps, there's a certain level of taxation that goes there. And when you talk to an accountant, that accountant will talk to you about your business plan and your strategy, and he will tell you or she will tell you what is the best entity for that tax consequence that you're trying to avoid and that you're trying to make sure you comply with the IRS. So this is a very important part of your business foundation, is what are you going to be and what entity are you going to assume as your business?
And I'd like to say there are some benefits to it with taxes too. It's not always a consequence. So it could be a tax benefit of choosing a certain business entity. The other thing that I'll say to this is that you are doing this with your mate or your spouse. So make sure that you all are having these discussions, especially if you've got separate finances or things going on, if you're going to be a partnership or whatever your certain tax situation is as a couple or as individuals.
And the next thing that we did when we started our business roughly 10 years ago is we thought very long and hard about where the business was going to be located. So we started a law firm. So law firms, just like any other business, have their own set of complications and hurdles and bumps and bruises. So every business is not going to necessarily need a brick and mortar like a law firm. And there are some law firms that are going expressly remote where they don't have brick and mortar. But personally, I think that law firms need some sort of office space for clients to come to and they can actually be served. But your business might not necessarily need that. But that's something that you need to talk about with your mate, with your spouse, with your partner about is this an online business? This is a business where we are not going to hold inventory and everything is going to be shipped through a third party where we don't necessarily need a brick and mortar. Is this going to be a business where we need a warehouse or some sort of space where we meet and where we have employees or staff? But those are all things that need to be identified and talked about because that's going to lay the foundation of where people find you, how they find you. And we're going to talk about why that's important later on down in the list of the foundation on how you start your $1 million business.
So next, branding development. So,
Brand. Okay. Do tell.
So brand, who are you? What do you look like? How do people identify you? Those are some of the things to me that go into brand development. Where do people learn about you? Is it digital? Is it social media? Is there a website? Do you have a logo? Do you need letterhead? These are all things I think that fall under brand development. I mean, this is what is going to identify you and how people can find you. So, creating a logo. It took us some time to come up with a logo, and we, had somebody brought on that helped us do that. And then, we had started thinking about what's our mission, what's our slogan, how is this meeting the needs of people, and how do we know, how do we make people know who we are?
Right. I think this is one of the most important parts of your business process and foundation because it sends the world the message of who you are. So one of the first things that we did when we started our business is we connected with a website developer, website designer. We roughed out what we thought our website should look like in the digital space, in the digital arena, because the first place that people look for you now in this day and age is online.
Absolutely.
So it's very important that you really think strategically about how you want to be viewed and perceived online. So you want to invest, figure out a way to get some coins, get your coins up to get some sort of website development if that's possible. And now there are even ways that you can develop free websites on your own if that's what you want to do. That's not what we did, but if you want to go that route and develop your own website, then you can. But our first steps that we did was web design, and we attacked social media, all the social media platforms. So at the time it was Twitter, it's Twitter X now, Facebook, LinkedIn. All of those are essentially free platforms where you can create business pages and get your name and your brand out in the digital space. And that is so important because how many times have we met somebody and the first thing we did was we Googled their business or Googled their name and we saw that infamous website down. The first thing you thought was this person is not serious if their website is down or if they can't be found on the digital space. So who we are digitally and who we are in that space sends the message that we're serious. So that lays the foundation for everything that you do when you're servicing a client or a customer or you're selling a good.
And the other thing I'll say about that, discuss with your partner, whether or not it is digital is the only way you want to brand yourself, because there are still other ways to do that and making people see who you are, what you do. You've got the billboard space, you've got advertising with magazines, you've got all types of other ways to let people know who you are, what your business is.
And first of all, I want to shout out to our brand publicist, CWIT. She does an excellent job on our brands. You might not have the budget to have a publicist on staff or on call like we do, and that we didn't start off with Chelsea Whittington and CWIT. We had to work up to that once we got rolling. But that's just a perfect example of how important it is as $1 million business to invest in somebody that's going to take care of your brand. And CWIT, Chelsea Whittington, shout out to her, give her a plug. She does an excellent job making sure that our brand is intact and making sure that there's not anything negative floating around on the internet. And the last thing that I'll talk about on branding is a lot of this has to do with business, but a lot of this is personal branding too, because sometimes you can't necessarily separate the two. So I'm gonna say this, y'all, because somebody out there need to hear this. So that Hotmail or Gmail account you got out there with sexualchocolate.com or I'm so fine 69, you need to get rid of all of those things, that old MySpace account that you might got up where you got some little salacious pictures that you might not necessarily be proud of today. There are people that can help you, like CWIT, Chelsea Whittington, and other brand ambassadors that can help you clean up all of those things before you start that business.
Oh my gosh.
It is extremely important because when you're in the development stages or laying a foundation for $1 million business, a negative review or negative digital brand could actually torpedo your ability to get a client or to land a contract. So you want to make sure before you jump and start that $1 million business, you want to make sure all the other things, personal branding things, have been cleaned up and taken care of.
I just hope nobody still has a MySpace page, because if they do, these tips that we giving to you, you need to forego and work on that part first.
Oh my goodness!
I'm just saying.
People still floating around with Hotmails and.
Well, I mean, Hotmail, I'm not mad at, but MySpace, I mean, Hotmail and Gmail might, whatever. But MySpace,
get yourself together though. Get your brand up, personal and business.
But
more importantly, personal, because that's the first thing we search. That people search for when they're trying to engage you and do business. And when you're going in to talk to a lawyer, they are looking at that stuff. So you need to make sure that's cleaned up. And they're looking to see if you're a serious person by where you are in the branding space.
Well, that takes me to the next thing, because, you talk about funding sources.
Okay, we're talking about the money. You need money.
We after we were doing, some of the things we actually were doing at the same time.
Yes.
But then we got to the point where we're saying, okay, we've come up with some numbers now. How do we fund this business? And, we were fortunate to be in a position where we were at previous employment that had some retirement funds that we were contributing to. So we started taking that money from, instead of putting it into the 401ks, we started putting it to a savings account to be our startup capital for our firm. But there are so many different types of funding sources out there for people to utilize. Not only, the SBA, Small Business Administration, giving loans out to businesses that are starting up in certain communities. You have grants that are available for certain areas of whatever your product or service or good may be. So do the research for looking for funding sources. You may have angel investors, people that want to invest in your business, in your community, or even the community that you live in. Check with the municipality and see what's available through the government, that city, town, they have programs for businesses starting up as well. So it's the vast variety of things out there.
Yeah, this is very important because money makes the world go round, and definitely in business. So if you're starting that $1 million business, you're going to have some level of funding, whether it comes from you personally or some third party financer, i.e., a bank. And this is why what we're talking about is so important in terms of these are all stepping ladders. So when you talk about identifying your name and entity formation and business plans, these are all things that organically are created to build up to asking for funding from some source, whether it be your family, whether it be a banker, whether it be an angel investor. Because I tell you what, if you go to somebody and you ask them to donate or to lend you some money to start a business, and you don't have a name, you don't have a business plan, you don't have any indication that your business is serious, then the chances of you getting that funding source that you need to start your business, it goes down exponentially. So bankers, when you go in to get funding for your business, bankers take you serious when you have a plan in hand, when you have some concept in hand, when you have an executive summary, when you outline for them exactly what you plan on doing. So those are the funding sources that I would say that we should all tap on. That's what we tapped on when we started our business. We used our own, we infused our business with, I think, I don't want to scare everybody, but we infused our business with roughly $40,000 to $50,000 of our own money. And the bank saw we were serious, and then they helped us with the other funding mechanism to help us get our business started. So if you don't have that, don't freak out, because there are so many programs that Shalise talked about that would allow you, if you're starting your business in certain areas, or if you're starting a certain type of business, that you can get grants, that you can get some other sort of funding. And you could have a rich uncle, or a rich relative, or a neighbor or family or friends that really truly believe in you, and they might be able to make up the shortfall. So don't let the funding scare you, but funding is something that I think is extremely important, no matter where it comes from, for you to get your business off the ground.
Well,
so think about that.
I just want to say one more thing about the funding. You want to just make sure that that doesn't prevent you from doing the other things that we've been talking about. Because as you plan that, especially when you're talking about doing something in certain types of communities, there are so many resources out there. And then the one last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, I said one last thing, but community banks, that are invested in your community are going to listen to you, because they want to invest in the community. They want businesses that are in the community to be their clients. So banks that are rooted in your community, look at those too.
All right. So now you got the funding, and right now we've gone through. These are all steps that Shalise and I took when we started our business, from A to, we're not quite to Z yet, but from A to maybe G, F or G. So yeah, so these are all steps that we did to get our business off the ground. So you have a business name, you have a good, you feel the need, you think there's a need out there. You have a location, you formed your entity, you have a business plan, you have the money. So now you have all of these things. So now the next thing for you to do is to launch. And I'm a firm believer that the launch is probably one of the most important things that you can do in the business space, because how you start a lot of times is not all the time how you finish, but it definitely gets you out the gates. It's just like, the way I look at it is, I'm a big sports person. It's like a sprinter. If a sprinter gets out the box and out the gate slow, then that person is running from behind, playing catch up the rest of the race. So you want to get your business off the ground and out the box quickly. And you want to hit that 100-yard dash and that business dash as quickly as you can. And you want to outpace the competition. So the best way to do that, and I'm sure Shalise has her thoughts, but what we did was we launched our business in a big way on social media, where we asked our friends to follow us, and we made a huge announcement of our business opening, and we contacted friends personally. There's nothing like a personal touch. And then the other thing that I think is extremely important is to have a formalized open house for your business. So have an open house. contact your local chamber of commerce. And I'm going to give a shameless plug to my fraternity brother, Chuck Hughes, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. He does a magnificent job of making sure that businesses in our community in Gary, Indiana are highlighted and spotlighted. So if you contact the Gary Chamber of Commerce, if you contact the Chamber of Commerce in your respective community and you ask that they do a ribbon cutting for you, they would be glad to do that, and probably for free. The only thing they'll probably ask you do is to become a member, which you should probably do anyway. But that is small pittance to what value you would get from having all the business community invited to your open house and your ribbon cutting, all the political people, all the council people in your district, the mayors love when a business is opened in their community. So you want to launch in a big way to let people know that you're present and that you're ready for business and ready to work.
So then the next thing that you have to do, your business is going, it's launched, you have clients coming in, you have to be consistent with the delivery of your services or your goods.
Consistency is the key to any business, because you can go through all of these things that we talked about, and you can have a business name, you can have a launch, you can have a ribbon cutting. But if you say that you're going to open up at 8:30 and you don't open up until noon, or if you say that you are going to sell a certain product, again, going back to my example of pies. So I'm a bakery, and every time the customer comes to my business, I don't have any pies, or I don't have the pie that I'm known for. That is not consistent, and you get out the gates in a bad way. So customers reward businesses for being consistent. So if you say that you're going to be open when you say you're going to be open. If you say that you sell a certain thing, make sure that you have that specific thing on deck and on duty at that time, and just be consistent.
Right. One of the things that we did that may not be something that a lot of businesses do is that we created what we kind of call a circle of trust.
So you're off to the next one.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So that circle of trust consists of mentors or people that we trust to help somewhat guide us and advise us in our business. And that may sound crazy because we're lawyers. You know, you think, how can somebody guide you in your business if they're not in the same business as you? But you'd be surprised at some of the things that we get, because we get caught up in the business of our business. But at the same time, you need some fresh perspectives that only other folks outside looking in can provide you, and that have your good prosperity, your good works at heart. They're not going to tell you something wrong. So that's why we call it the circle of trust.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer that, no one builds anything by themselves. So, it takes a village to raise a child. And in the business world, it takes a village to raise a business and to make a business profitable. So I think that you don't necessarily have to do something as formal as Shalise and I did, where we have a group of respected business people and nonprofit people and people in the government space on a circle of trust, people that we could get advice from and mentorship from. If you don't want to do something that formal, I say you don't necessarily have to do that. But what you can do is identify a mentor or somebody that you respect in the space or in the area of business that you're in. And you'd be surprised if you go to an old mentor or somebody that's in your space, in your industry, all the seeds and the jewels that they'll gladly share with you if you just ask. So I think it's important, if you're building a business, specifically a profitable $1 million business, you're going to need to tug on people with expertise in your industry. And sometimes, a lot of times, outside of your industry, because I read a book about Steve Jobs, and he created the iPhone based on a calligraphy class that he took years and years before he actually started Apple. So sometimes getting that inspiration from people outside of your industry brand is extremely important, and it forces you to be creative and to be dynamic and to create a good or a service that no one has necessarily thought of.
Well, the next thing that I think that is very important to us, and it's personal to us in the sense of it comes from our faith, and that's the philanthropy arm of it, giving in some kind of way, because we are givers, and we believe, that our faith is you plant a seed and you reap a harvest. We like to bless people, organizations in our community. One of the reasons why we put our firm in Gary, Indiana, is so that we could help our community grow and prosper. And so by doing that, we support certain organizations and events and things that are happening around our community so that they can prosper as well.
No, I believe that is a great foundational part of building a successful $1 million business is the concept of giving and philanthropy. There's a biblical principle in sowing and reaping. And pretty much what you sow and what you put into something is essentially what you're going to get out of it. So I think that any successful business that is built or that is going to have any sort of success is going to have to pour into the communities which they lay root. So if you want to be successful, you're going to have to plant seeds, because no one likes takers. No one likes takers. So you don't want to be a taker in your community. You want to be a giver. And when you open up your hands and your hands are open, that allows for things to be put in it. If your fist is closed, then things won't go into a closed fist. So it's extremely important that you, as a aspect of your $1 million business, if you want to build a business that's profitable, you have to have a certain element of philanthropy to it, and you have to have a spirit and a giving spirit in nature.
Right, because when you give, it shall come back to you 100 times fold.
Yes. Amen. Amen. That's biblical in nature. So
So,
the last thing and the last foundational point that we want to go over with you, and we hope that this podcast has blessed you and that has inspired you to build that $1 million business with your spouse, with your mate, or with your partner. The last nugget that we will give you that is something that we do a lot of is we revisit our original business plan to make sure that we are lockstep and key with the things that we planned out. You want to talk about that?
well, I think that, we did our business plan in a time stage saying, okay, here's the first 5 years of our business. And so that allowed for us to know that we're going to come back and revisit it to make sure that we've done what we said we would do in this business, or did we need to pivot and do something differently? But it all comes down to, hey, this is how I can make my business grow. Me and my partner look at what we've done. What can we do differently? Did this fall in accordance with what we had planned to do? What was our mission? How do you make this business better?
No, I think that's extremely important for you to keep up with the plan that you originally laid down in the earlier steps that we identified in this podcast, because business is I love sports. I love my sports analogies, but business is like a boxing match. It's like a 12-round match. And what you expect that you're going to do when you in round one, you get hit. This is an old saying that Mike Tyson used to use, is everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And I truly believe that business is like that. You could plan and map out everything that you want to map out, but the market changes, clients go away, new clients come, things that you thought would be there are not there. So you have to make sure that you're staying up to speed on industry standards and client needs, and making sure that your business plan is still relevant, because your business plan, depending on what the market tells you, could change. So it's extremely important that you revisit your business plan every so often. Shalise and I, we kind of talk about it, I would say quarterly, at least 4 times a year, where we're talking about new clients. We're talking about new attorneys that we're going to add on, new positions that we're going to create. And it's amazing that in our firm, one of the things that we talked about growing actually didn't necessarily come to fruition, but where there was another market opportunity that opened up to us. And because we revisit our business plan all the time, we were able to capture that and make sure we benefited from it. So the most important part is to make sure that you stay up to speed on your business plan. Don't create it and just put it away. It's your foundation and your blueprint that is subject to change, and you have to make sure that you keep up with it.
I would agree. The only thing that I would add to that is that, you know what, it's not about the entire business plan, but it might be one segment. So if you're looking at this one segment and saying, okay, have we met this? Have we done this? Or do we need to work on this to make it better? It might be something that you didn't get necessarily get a chance to get off the ground. So just go back and look at it and make sure that you're sticking to what you identified to be that service or need for the market.
So there you have it. I hope this podcast blessed you. If it blessed you, we ask that you hit the subscribe button, that you like, share, or comment. And this is something that's I think that's going to bless you. And we pray that you take some of the tips that we have provided with you today, and that you go out and that you and your partner and your spouse or your mate, that you go out and build that business, that $1 million business. And we will be so happy to hear from you if this podcast blessed you. So when you build it, come back to us. Make sure you drop a comment on this podcast and let us know how it's going. We'd be glad to hear from you.
Thank you, and God bless.
Take care. Build that business.